Have you ever lay awake in the middle of the night, helplessly replaying a minor social interaction in your head? Perhaps you said something slightly awkward during a morning meeting. Perhaps a close friend took much longer than usual to reply to your text message. In those quiet hours, a familiar and heavy anxiety begins to settle deeply into your chest. We humans spend a tremendous amount of our limited lifespan worrying endlessly about what other people think of us. In our modern interconnected society, seeking constant social validation has almost become an involuntary biological reflex. We carefully curate our digital profiles to project absolute visual perfection. We bite our tongues in important conversations just to avoid causing any potential friction or conflict. And we mentally exhaust ourselves by holding up different heavy masks for different social circles. We desperately try to be the flawless employee, the perfect partner, and the endlessly accommodating friend all at the exact same time. But this relentless pursuit of universal approval is fundamentally exhausting. It slowly drains your inner mental vitality drop by drop. More importantly, it slowly distances you from your own authentic self. You unknowingly begin to live your one precious life entirely on someone else's terms. You transform your day-to-day existence into an endless theatrical performance directed exclusively by the shifting expectations of total strangers. Why do we willingly place ourselves inside this invisible prison? Today, we are going to explore a profound philosophical approach that offers a permanent cure to this modern social disease. We are going to gently learn how to actively claim back our own absolute freedom. The beautiful insights we are exploring together tonight originate from an extraordinary book titled The Courage to be Disliked, brilliantly co-authored by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumite Koga. This remarkable text is structured as a classical Socratic dialogue taking place between an angry, cynical young man and a serene, wise philosopher. The book serves as a highly accessible gateway into individual psychology, a powerful framework pioneered by the Austrian psychiatrist Alfred Adler. Alongside Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, Adler is widely considered one of the three great foundational pillars of 19th-century psychology. However, his central theories were radically different from those of his famous contemporaries. Freud heavily emphasized etiology, which is the scientific study of past causation. Freud firmly believed that our past psychological traumas strictly determine our present behavior and our ultimate future destiny. Alfred Adler completely and boldly rejected this deterministic, gloomy worldview. He introduced a groundbreaking concept known as teleology. According to strict Adlerian psychology, we humans are not blindly driven by past causes, but rather pulled forward by our present goals. For example, if you are afraid to leave your house and socialize, it is not simply because a childhood trauma is currently paralyzing you. Adler provocatively argues that you are subconsciously creating the physical emotion of fear right now, because your present, hidden goal is to avoid the risk of interacting with other people. This is an incredibly challenging and sometimes uncomfortable paradigm shift. It strips away our excuses and forces us to take absolute total responsibility for our current emotional landscape. Let us delve deeply into the central and most liberating concept of Adlerian psychology, the brilliant separation of tasks. Much of our daily interpersonal friction arises simply because we constantly intrude on other people's personal tasks, or we willingly allow them to maliciously intrude upon ours. Adler proposes a simple but ruthlessly effective mental exercise. Whenever you encounter a stressful social situation, ask yourself one clear question: whose task is this? You can calmly determine whose task it is by looking at who ultimately receives the final direct consequences of the choice. And for instance, if a concerned mother is constantly yelling at her child to study for an exam, Adler would argue she is making a severe conceptual mistake. Studying is fundamentally the child's exclusive task. The mother cannot physically study for the child, nor will she sit quietly at the desk to take the final examination. By forcing her heavy expectations onto the child, she is violently violating the delicate separation of tasks, which only generates deep mutual resentment and anger over time. This profound concept directly applies to our lifelong fear of being judged by society. It is your personal task to live your life according to your own sincere, honest principles. However, whether someone else randomly decides to like you, hate you, or completely misinterpret your actions is completely and entirely their own specific task. You have absolutely zero physical control over the internal emotional reactions of another independent human being. When you desperately try to manipulate how others perceive you, you are foolishly carrying a heavy emotional burden that was never yours to carry in the first place. You must learn to gently but firmly drop that impossible burden today. How do we actually practice this profound separation of tasks in the messy, complicated reality of our daily lives? Let us clearly apply this mental framework to a very common workplace scenario. Imagine you have a highly demanding and perpetually critical office boss. No matter how many grueling extra hours you work, they never seem satisfied with your output. You find yourself constantly walking on fragile eggshells, deeply anxious and stressed every single Sunday evening. Using Adler's elegant method, you must clearly draw the psychological boundary line. It is your specific task to perform your professional contractual duties with high integrity and solid competence. That is your clearly defined boundary. And however, dealing with their own management stress, managing their unreasonable personal expectations, and deciding whether to praise or criticize you, those are entirely your boss's personal tasks. If your boss chooses to be perpetually unhappy and irritable, that is their own personal emotional problem to solve, not yours. You do not need to act like a sponge and absorb their toxic energy. In your private personal relationships, implementing this means having the quiet courage to express your true feelings without agonizing for days over the recipient's potential reaction. If a close friend asks for a difficult, time-consuming favor, and you simply do not have the physical capacity, your task is to say no kindly but firmly. If that friend subsequently becomes angry and distant, that anger is exclusively their task to manage and process. By clearly dividing the unseen emotional labor in every single human interaction, you instantly eliminate the vast majority of your daily mental stress. You finally stop trying to control the uncontrollable aspects of the universe. True personal freedom is not about acquiring vast amounts of material wealth or completely isolating yourself on a lonely, disconnected mountaintop. According to the profound teachings of Alfred Adler, true freedom is simply having the profound, quiet courage to be disliked by other people. When you finally stop trying to meticulously manage and control everyone else's emotional perception of you, a tremendous reservoir of spiritual energy is suddenly released back into your own life. You are no longer nervously reading the room before you dare to speak your mind. You are no longer painfully bending your own deep moral principles just to avoid a minor, temporary social disagreement. You finally realize that being disliked by someone is simply the unavoidable cost of living authentically. It is the absolutely necessary price of personal human freedom. And the very next time you feel the familiar cold, suffocating grip of social anxiety creeping in, pause for a quiet, mindful moment and clearly define your emotional boundary. Ask yourself exactly what your task is and let the rest of the universe handle its own tasks. Thank you for joining us tonight on BookDream for this quiet reflection. We sincerely hope this brief philosophical journey has offered you a new, liberating perspective on your busy daily life. If this gentle message resonated deeply with your current emotional struggles, please consider leaving a thoughtful comment below. We love reading your personal insights. Share this video with a dear friend who might need the quiet courage to simply be themselves today. Remember to gently hit the subscribe button, and until next week, walk forward with the beautiful, unapologetic courage to be securely disliked.